Okay, now I want to go to Second Maccabees in the Apocrypha, Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter. We're going to read some things out of here, and then we're going to progress into our teaching and go and show you some other things pertaining to the laws of the Most High, right? Now, long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Israelites to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of Elohim. What is it with these people with the laws of the Most High? Because they understand that if you keep the people who were chosen in rebellion, you can continue to capitalize off of their judgment that sits upon their head. You will never be equal to the other nations because you are a chosen people who have been called by the Most High for a specific task. Okay, just want to throw that out there so you can understand. That's the reason why these people want to keep them rebelling against the law. It don't benefit them because they already weren't given the oracles of the Most High. They weren't given a covenant. They weren't given an agreement to obey these commandments. So they don't care whether you keep it or not. Okay. Now, 2 Maccabees chapter 6 verse 2. And to pollute the temple in Jerusalem and to call it the temple of Jupiter. Okay. Now we got to go and look at Jupiter. Okay. They had them to call the temple of Jupiter. Okay. So I'm going to once again look into the Bible Compact Dictionary and let's look at this Jupiter character, see who Jupiter actually is, right? All right. It says Jupiter, the chief of the Roman gods. The Greeks called him. You're not ready for this. You are not ready for this. Jupiter, right? The chief of the Roman gods. The Greeks called him Zeus. The prince of Lystria called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercury. So the Greek name for Jupiter was Zeus. Okay, so let's go back to Maccabees. Now we understand Zeus. Jesus. Okay. Is it a play on words? Is it really a transliteration? Or is it actually a substitution to worship Zeus? Jesus. Jesus. Is it a mere coincidence that Zeus was the Greek deity and that the Greeks translated the Bible from the Hebraic, Aramaic to the Greek, Latin to Greek, or I should say Greek to Latin? Think about it now. Don't throw no rocks. Do some research. Okay? Let's get back to Maccabees chapter second Maccabees chapter 6. All right? Let's read verse 2 one more time. And to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call in the temple of Jupiter, which is Zeus, Olympius, and that in Gerizim of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place. So they called in the temple Zeus or Zeus. Jesus, Jesus, right? I know you're not going to like this. No, I know you're not going to like me from me bringing it this way, but I have to bring it this way, right? The day of worship was changed to Sunday on the Son's day. We're going to get into that in a minute. We're going to show you some documentaries that you can, some documents rather, that you can research yourself. Here, Maccabees tells us that they called in the temple on Zeus. The J-E-S-U-S is not the Messiah's name. And I know that pierces you in your heart. And I'm not non-sympathetic, because when I discovered that the Messiah's name was not Zeus, Jesus, Jesus, I cried like a baby. So as a teacher, I have a responsibility to teach you. And there's a great debate going on. Well, Jesus is a transliteration of the name Jesus, which is a transliteration of the name Joshua, which is a transliteration of the name Yeshua. Why is there a need to translate the name? Why? That's the only thing I'm asking. Why? People go through the great detail to prove to you that it is possible that the name is transliterated Jesus, Jesus. My thing that I'm trying to present to you is this. Why the need to translate the name? Why? If he was a Hebrew, why go to Greek, to Latin, to English? Why not go straight from Hebrew to English? Well, brother, they didn't have English during those days, so the people that translated the Bible spoke in Latin and Greek. You live in the matrix, don't you? You can't see. I have a saying I used to say when I had my other channel. If it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. How clear can you be? We just read right here that they call on Jupiter, which is the Greek deity Zeus. So take a deep breath, relax, kick off your shoes, have a glass of wine, you know, take a chill pill, as they say, and relax your mind, because truth is getting out there. Okay, Jesus is not the Messiah's name, right? Jesus is a transliteration, supposed to be, of the name 2424 of the Greek. Look it up, and it tells you that it is the name of our master and of, I think, 3 or 4 other disciples. And there were no disciples named Jesus. Or not disciples, but 3 or 4 other Israelites. There were no Israelites in the Old Testament called Jesus. As a kid coming up, I said, how come the name Jesus? I asked the question, how come the name Jesus is not in the Old Testament? And then it was told to me, well, Jesus is concealed in the Old Testament and revealed in the New. But we can read in the Strong's Concordance that it says that the Messiah's name, there were 3 or 4 other Israelites, or 3 or 4 other Israelites that had the same name he has. So somebody slipped a Mickey in your drink again. Okay, let's get back. I want to read this second Maccabees chapter 6 and 2 one more time, right? And to pollute the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter or Zeus, Olympius, and that garrison of Zeus, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwell in the place. Verse 3. And coming in of the mischief was sore and grievous to the people. Verse 4. For the temple was filled with riot, reveling by the Gentiles, who dealt with harlots and had to do with women with the circuit of the holy places. And besides that, they brought in things that were not lawful. Also, verse 5, the altar also was filled with profane things which the law forbid. Verse 6, neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days, or ancient feast, or to profess himself to be an Israelite. You're not an Israelite. You're African American. You're a Negro. You're a black man. Says who? Verse 7. And in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices, and when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Israelites were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying Ui. Now, we got another name we got to look up. So let's go look up Bacchus. Okay, now I'm going to read from the American Heritage. Okay, this is the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language. I happen to have lost my cover. It probably got tore up. But be that as it may, I'm reading from the American Heritage Dictionary. And what volume is this here? This is 4th edition. So we're going to read who this Bacchus character is. Bacchus, it says, a Greek and Roman mythology. It says see Dionysus. So we're going to look at Dionysus, D-I-O-N-Y. Okay, now let's look at Dionysus, right? It says, a Greek and Roman mythology, the god of wine and of orgiastic religion, celebrating the powers and fertility of nature. Also called Bacchus, Latin Dionysus, from the Greek Dionysus. So he is also called Bacchus. So he is the god of wine and of orgiastic religion, celebrating the powers and fertility of nature, also called Bacchus. Now I want to read something from another source I have. This is called the Book of Gods and Goddesses. You can get this book for a minimum price. If you Google it on Yahoo, I'm sure you'll find a real reasonable price. And most of these books that I have, you can get them on Amazon. Pretty much people give these books away because people don't read these books. It don't matter. But this book is called the Book of Gods and Goddesses, Eric Shaleen, and it is actually Harper Entertainment. It is copywritten. Let's see. This one is copywritten. This one is copywritten in 2004, but it was conceived and designed and produced by Quid Publishing, 4th floor, Sheridan House in England. Okay, now we're going to look at this Bacchus Dionysus from this Book of Gods and Goddesses. Okay, Dionysus Bacchus. It says the god of wine, ecstasy, and vegetation. Dionysus discovered the grapevine and making of wine. His father was Zeus. That's what I was looking for. His father was Zeus, who impregnated the Theban princess Semele, but she died through the Macatus of Zeus' angry. And a jealous wife, Hera, before she could give birth. Zeus saved Dionysus, Dion, let me say the name right, Dionysus, by sewing his unborn son into his own thigh until the child was ready to be born. Dionysus journeyed to the underworld and rescued his mother, who became the goddess on Olympus. As a punishment, Hera drove Dionysus mad. He wandered the earth in the state of enchantment madness until the goddess Rhea cured him and taught him the mysteries that would ensure a happy afterlife for his initiates. accompanied by a retinue and a frenzied followers who cried out and clashed their cymbals in his honor. Dionysus continued to roam, punishing any mortal who doubted his divinity. When the Thebans refused to worship him, he turned them murderous and mad. Okay, so that is the deity called Dionysus, I should say. It's a hard name to pronounce. Dionysus. Okay. Now let me go back and read something while I have this book in my hand. I forgot about this book I had. Let's go back and let's look at Jupiter. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna, in this same book, I already read it out of the Bible Compact Dictionary. I've already read it out of the Bible Compact Dictionary. So now we're going to read out of the book of Gods and Goddesses on Jupiter. Okay, it says the supreme god of the Greek mythology, the head of the Olympian pantheon was wise. Zeus presided over the affairs of gods and mortals. He usurped his father Cronus in the war between the gods and the Titans and was called the Thunderer because he controlled thunder, lightning, and rain. With just a nod of his head, he could shake the very foundations of Mount Olympus, where he lived in the splendid palace built for him by the god Hephaestus. Zeus punished wrongdoing, rewarded truth, and settled the arguments of the gods. Although he would sometimes intervene in the affairs of mortals, he watched events unfold on earth with a certain detachment. Zeus married Hera, but partnered various mortal women, goddesses, and nymphs, with whom he had countless offspring, much to his wife's anger. One of the best known sons was Heracles, or Hercules, who was Zeus' son by the mortal Alcmene. As Jupiter, Zeus was also the supreme god of the Romans. He originated as a sky god, as he was worshipped as the rain giver and also withholder. The Romans called him the beast, or the best rather, and the greatest, because he controlled health, prosperity, and wisdom. Man, that's detailed, isn't it? He controlled health, prosperity. This is unbelievable. Wait a minute, let me get my composure together. Zeus to the Romans controlled health, prosperity, and wisdom. He presided over the city of Rome and symbolized both the might and right. Jupiter's impressive temple in Rome also had altars dedicated to his wife, Hera, or Juno, and his favorite daughter, Athena, or Minerva. As Roman emperors became living gods themselves, his impotence decreased in Roman religions. Aha. So, there we have some information we wanted to share with you with regards to what happened in the days of the early Israelites, the laws that was imposed upon the Israelites, that they could not keep the laws of the Most High, which included the Sabbath days, feast days, the dietary law, the circumcision, and the whole 9 yards. So that's what happened. Now, let's go back and finish this out. Go back to 2 Maccabees chapter 6 and verse 8. Okay. Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathens by the suggestion of Ptolemies against the Israelites, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices. See, So here we see they're still trying to get the Israelites to participate in their sacrifices, right? Okay, verse 9. And whosoever would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. So they passed another law that said if you don't keep the customs, if you don't conform to the manners of the Gentiles, of the heathens, right? So that's why, this week I was going through a little thing because this is the so-called holiday season, the season to be jolly, and I was saying to myself, I said to myself, self, how come you can't be a part of this? And I said, because of the knowledge that I have, I want to belong, but I feel like a misfit. I feel like the Sesame Street song came to my mind and said, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things don't belong, right? And I said to myself, I can't fit in this. As much as I would love to be a part of what's called the normality of living, it's normal every year to come into this season and to embrace Christmas. It's so overwhelming. It's such a spirited thing. It's such a overwhelming spirit of joy and giving that just comes over, and it seems so innocent and so wonderful, right? It's nothing, could be nothing, it can't be nothing wrong with it. But when I go and I look at the history and I look at how the laws and the customs of the pagans was imposed on my people, the Israelites, in the days of the Romans and the Greeks, who served Jupiter and Zeus, I can't conform, brothers and sisters. Shaul said something, even though he said a lot of debatable things and things that causes people to twist the scriptures to their own destruction. But he said in Romans 12, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Don't conform to the... See, they said, let's go back to Maccabees 6 and 9. He said, whosoever would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Now, they might not kill you physically, but they will sure enough kill you politically. You don't participate in the pagan festivities, Christmas party and all of that at work, you're going to get impacted in your review if you work in corporate America. I was told I didn't have enough diversity. I went from being Mr. Diversity to being no diversity at all because I decided to stop participating in the ways of the heathens. But here we see, he says, whosoever would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. Verse 10. For there were two women brought and had circumcised their children, whom they had openly led round about the cities, and babies hanging at their breasts. They cast them down headlong from the wall, and others had run together into causes nearby to keep the Sabbath day, secretly being discouraged, or being discovered to Philip, were all burnt together because they had made a conscience to help themselves for honor of the most sacred day. These devils burnt them for keeping it. You know, those of us who keep the Sabbath, we hate it. If they could pass a law to kill us all, they would. Because we on another side. We on the opposite side of the coin, you know. We in a whole another world. Everybody else up. This is Saturday, you know, we do what we do. We go shopping, we do, you know, we go clubbing, we Friday night, it's Friday night, it's the freaking weekend, baby. You know, it's party night, you know. Get on your finery, you know, get dressed, you know, put on your finery, you know. Cause this is Friday night. It's the weekend, baby. So here we see these people, they hate them so much that they burnt them alive for keeping the Sabbath day. Who changed the Sabbath, brothers and sisters? We can see right here that this was not ordained by the Most High. He gave us the Sabbath, but man is changing the Sabbath and imposing laws on the Israelites and imposing laws on those who want to keep the Most High's laws. And you reject his laws, keep our laws, and you'll live. You obey his laws and we'll kill you. In a day's time, we'll kill your influence. We'll fire you. We'll get rid of you. We'll demote you. We'll squeeze the life out of you so you won't have jack. That's sad, but it's true. It's a reality, right? Okay, now, verse 11, 2 Maccabees 6 and 11. And others that had run together into causes nearby to keep the Shabbat day secretly, being discouraged or discovered to Philip, were all burnt together because they made a conscience to help themselves for honor the most sacred day. Verse 12. Now I beseech those that read this book that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they indulge those punishments, not to be for destruction, but for the chastening of our nation. For it is a token of his great goodness when wicked doers are not suffered any long time, but forthwith punished. Not as with other nations, whom the master patiently forbeareth to punish till they become to the fullness of their sins. So dealeth he with us, lest that being come to the height of the sin, afterwards he should take vengeance of us. And therefore he never withdrew his mercies from us, and though he punished with his adversaries, yet doth he never forsake his people. Now, let's skip down to the last verse of that chapter. I want to show you, right? Because see, let's skip down to the last verse of that chapter because I want to show you something, right? You have to do what? You have to obey the Father, the Most High, and not allow the heathens who impose laws against you to keep you from doing what? From doing that which is right. Let's read 2 Maccabees chapter 6 verse 29. And they led him, changing the goodwill. They bore him a little before unto hatred, because the foresaid speeches proceeded as they thought from a desperate mind. But when he was ready to die with stripes, he groaned and said, It is manifested unto Yah, that have the holy knowledge, that wherein I might have been delivered from death, to I endure sore pains in the body by being beaten, but in soul am well content to suffer these things, because I fear him. You see that? Because I fear him. Verse 31. And thus this man died, leaving his death for an example of noble courage and a memorial of virtue, not only unto young men, but unto all his nation. So we see here, brothers and sisters, that in this particular subject called the finished works of the Messiah, we're showing you that the Messiah came through after all of this that had happened. Right? I'm sure he knew the history. He's the all knowledgeable one that came through 42 generations manifested in the flesh. He knew the wickedness of what had befell on the nation of Israel in the kingdom of the Greeks and the Romans. All it was prophesied to happen. He knew futuristically, the Messiah said in Luke 21, I think it was, he said, they shall fall by the sword and be led captive into all nations, to be led captive, prisoners, slaves into all nations, and that Jerusalem would be trodden down by these same Gentiles who passed laws to forbid Israelites from obeying the laws of the Most High. Them same Gentiles, he said, they're going to trodden down Jerusalem until their time is done. That's what the book say. Right? You don't believe me? Check it out. Go to Luke 21. He said they shall be led captive to all nations. Now, I'm going to show you something as I prepare, because the lesson's pretty much done. But I want to give you something, okay? So let's go. All right. Let's go. I want to go do a couple things here. I have another book called Fossilized Customs. You can see that right there. Is it? I have another book called Fossilized Customs. I don't know if this book is still being sold. It was actually being given away at one time or another, but it may be on the market to be sold. But it's a good book, and I want to look at Sunday, right? Let's look at let's go to let's see. Before I do that, let's go to mine is going 1,000 miles an hour right now. Let's go to the American Heritage Dictionary, right? No, let's not go there. Let's pick this book back up. Wait a minute. I'm laughing. Let's pick this book back up as we come to a close, and we're going to show you some things, and then we're going to close out this lesson for today. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to look up here in this Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary, and we're going to look up Sabbath, right? All right. He defined, this is what he said about the Sabbath in here, right? He said Sabbath, to desist, cease, or rest. Right? To desist, cease, or rest. Now, let me ask you a question. The Sabbath means to desist, right? To cease and rest. That's what the seventh day was created for, right? Okay, we're going to show you what the book say, what the Bible says about that day, but let's let him continue. So he says, the day of rest, the weekly day of rest and worship of the Jews. Okay, we're going to debunk that right quick, because before there was a quote unquote, using that terminology, Jew. Okay, maybe I'll look that up, right? Maybe not in this lesson. Okay, maybe I will, I don't know. Anyway, he says the weekly day of rest and worship of the Jews. So now we're going to debunk that right quick, right? So let's go to the scriptures as we debunk that the seventh day was the weekly Sabbath day of the Jews. Before there was a Jewish nation, this law was given. So we look to not theology, or to our pastor, to our bishop, to our pope, evangelist, potentate, whatever title that they call themselves by. Let's look to the scripture, the manual that we live by, right? Or that we carry, and we carry like we live by it, you know. But do we live by it, or do we just carry it? It's a decorative piece that goes with our outfit. Anyway, Second Chronicles, Genesis chapter 2, right? Chapter 2, verse 1. Genesis. No, I'm kidding. Genesis. Wait a minute. I gotta be serious now. Okay, this is serious business. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. All right. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, Yah ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Yah blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Yah created and made. So, before there was an Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, there was what? There was a law called the Sabbath law. Okay? The law has not changed. Man have changed the law. Man have said, oh, the law's done, nailed to the tree. The Messiah didn't teach that. Neither did Paul. If you actually look at, and as we're doing a lesson on the finished works of Christ, you'll see what Paul actually said. The Most High instituted the Sabbath before there was Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. Okay? Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. Before there was an Israel or Israelite, there was a law of creation called the seventh day law. We just read it. He said he set apart the seventh day and said, rest on this day. Right? So we just read that. So now let's go back to Mr. Zondervan's. Let's go back to Mr. Zondervan's, because Mr. Zondervan told me that the Sabbath day was the Jews' Sabbath, which we just debunked that already. We just threw that out the window. So it's not the Jews' Sabbath. It is the Sabbath that was given before there was an Israelite nation. Right? Now, let me do this here while I'm there. I'm going to hit something right quick while we're there. Very quick. Get to the point so I can close out this lesson. The terminology Jew is not the whole nation of Israel. Okay? If you look up the word in Strong's Concordance 3064, it is the word Yehudi. It says from 3063, a Yehudite, that is a Yehudite or a Jew, or a descendant of Yehuda, that is Judah. Right? And if you go to 3063, 3063 says Yehuda, a celebrated Yehuda or Judah, the name of 5 Israelites also, and of the tribe descended from its territory. So, to correctly and accurately utilize the terminology, historically, Jew is used to reference the whole nation of Israel when it is wrong. It is incorrect. Jew which is a modern terminology, is from, as we just showed you, from the word Yehuda, which is one of the 12 sons. Okay, now that you understand about this term Jew, now you understand that every Israelite is not a Jew. If you're from the tribe of Benjamin, you're not a Jew. If you're from the tribe of Dan, you're not a Jew. You're a Danite. If you're from the tribe of Benjamin, you're a Benjamite. If you're from the tribe of Simeon, you're a Simeonite. Right? Okay. So let's be clear on that. Now let's go back to the Compact Bible Dictionary again and finish out this what he said here. So Sabbath day, he said, it is the seventh day, the weekly day of rest and worship. Period. Leave the Jew and all that out. It is the seventh day worship. Period. Right? Now, the Sabbath was instituted at creation. He's right. The story of creation, and gives all these references, right? Okay, now I'm going to go off into all his philosophy that he gives, because he gives a whole lot of philosophy and so forth. But he mentioned about what we just read about Epiphanes Antiochus, who tried to abolish the Sabbath day. And the Sabbath days, of course. So he goes off into a lot of philosophy, and he goes into try to justify the changing of. Let me read this. Let me read this part right here. This is where you throw the Mickey into the drink, right? Okay. He just explained to you that the Sabbath day was the seventh day of the week, which was given to us at creation. But then he threw a Mickey in there and said, well, it was the Jews' Sabbath. Wrong. It is creation's Sabbath. It belongs to all the creation. Here's where he throws the Mickey in the drink. He says the early Christians, most of whom were Jews. Okay, he's using that word Jew again. What I tell you about the word Jew. All Israel was not called Jews. So he threw a Mickey in the drink. All right. He says most of whom were Jews kept the seventh day as a Sabbath. But since the resurrection of their Lord was most blessed day in their lives, they began very early also to meet for worship on the first day of the week. Then he gives a reference, Acts 2:1. And to designate as the Lord's day, as the split between the Jews and Christians widened, the Christians came gradually to meet for worship only on the Lord's day and gave up the observance of the seventh day. So he's giving you a historical record which is inaccurate. Okay, that's not why they kept the day, because the Greeks and the Romans worship Sol, the day of the sun, which is what the day we're gonna give that to you. Let me just hold your horses. I'm moving too fast for myself, for my own good. Okay. One thing I want to deal with before I go further. Let's look at Acts chapter 2:1. This is what he makes a reference to. You may never learn this. We're gonna look at Acts chapter 2:1 because he makes a reference of a scripture or a passage of text that he uses as a justification for changing the Sabbath day. You may never get this in any theological seminary class, but you're gonna get this today. Okay. I should patent this or coin this lesson because I know it's going to probably hit the circuit board. But somebody's going to get paid off of this. But you heard it first here on Malachi.org. Okay. Now, let me say this here. I'm not going to go there because he actually is utilizing this one of the feast days called the Feast of Shavuot, which is called Pentecost in today's contemporary terminology, which happened to be on a Sunday, right? So he's utilizing the Pentecost as the birthday of the first day of the week worship. Wrong. That just happened to be a feast day. So that is not a justifiable reason to substitute the Sabbath day for the first day of the week. Okay. Now, so having said that, we don't have to go to Acts chapter 2:1. All right. Now, We're going to look into the same book again, Compact Bible Dictionary. And we're going to look at now, we're going to look at Sunday. Sunday, right? Sunday, right? All right, Sunday. It has here, the first day of the week, commemorating the resurrection of Jesus, right? Now, ask yourself a question. Ask yourself a question. Does the text say that the Messiah, who the world incorrectly calls Jesus, rose on Sunday? Does it say that? Or does the traditions of men say it said that they went to the tomb on the first day of the week as it began to dawn? That's the scripture he gives. I'm not going to go there because this lesson is not about that. We'll do a whole lesson on that in itself. But here it says that he says the first day of the week, commemorating the resurrection of Jesus, right? No, Yahshua the Messiah did not resurrect on the first day of the week. That is a traditional teaching that doesn't have, even in reading the text, it doesn't even line up with that, because the Messiah died on the preparation for the Sabbath day, and if he died on a Good Friday, quote unquote, how could he raise 3 days later and 3 nights on Sunday morning? So that would be an impossibility. Okay. Now, however, the Messiah died in the middle of the week in the preparation day for the Passover. We can read that all through the Bible. Or I should say all through the brief Kadash, the Messianic scriptures. Right? Now, let me get back. So, he says, and the day of Pentecost, Acts 2:4-1, for a time after the ascension of, I'm going to read just the way it is, Jesus, the Christians met on the 7th and first days of the week, but as the Hebrew Christian churches declined in influence, the tendency to observe the Hebrew Sabbath slowly passed. So he's throwing a Mickey in your drink. No, it was not the Hebrew Sabbath, brothers and sisters. It was creation Sabbath. Okay? The disciples at Troas worship on the first day. And he gives Acts 20:7. So let's go to Acts 20:7, right? So it says here, I'm going to do from the linguistic perspective to prove to you. I'm not going to do exegesis of the passage because I don't have the time to do it in this lesson. I'm going to show you something from the Greek text itself that debunks what he said the first day of the week. Okay, now, Acts chapter 20, verse 7, and it reads, upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continue his speech until midnight. Now, let's look at this slowly in the Greek text. If we look at this word in the Greek text, we will find upon the first day of the week is a phrase. Upon the first is the Greek word mia, which means one or first. So one, this word, Greek word mia, means one or first, right? It don't necessarily mean first in singular or numeral one, but it could mean one or first, one of. So it says the first. Now, if you look at this, any scholar that will tell the truth will admit to you that day is italicized, which means that day is not in the original text. Okay? So day is not there. So it would read the first, and then it says of the week. That's the Greek ho. And then it says of the week. The word week is, are you ready for this? You're not ready for this, are you? The word week is Sabbaton. Sabbaton in the Greek is equivalent to the Hebrew Shabbat, which means what? 7. So if we read it properly, it would read upon one of the Sabbaths when the disciples came together to break bread. One of the Sabbaths, not the first day of the week, because first is one, not first. So it's defined, as I said, one or first. It can be translated one or first. So that first should be translated one of the Sabbath. If you get a Greek, if you go to the Babel fish and you put that phrase in there and translate it back to Greek, it will tell you one of the Sabbaths. One of the Sabbaths. It won't say the first day of the week. It will say one of the Sabbaths. Now, how do we know that this is one of the Sabbaths versus this being Sunday or the first day of the week? Because if we exegese this whole chapter, which I'm not going to do it, we'll find out that this was after Passover. You have 7 Sabbaths that lead you to Shabbat or Pentecost. So this was one of the Sabbaths after the celebration of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Passover or Pesach. One of the Sabbaths in that sequence of 7 Sabbaths, which leads to Shabbat or the day of Pentecost. One of the Sabbaths. Okay? That's all that is. We can go to another place, right? He's probably going to cover that in here. He's probably going to cover that scripture, that text also. Okay? He says, Paul admonished the Corinthians to lay in store by Yah has prospered them, doing it week by week on the first day. And he gives 1 Corinthians 16:2. So we're going to show you in the language, it's the same phrase that we just saw in Acts 20:1. Okay, Acts 20:7, I should say. 2 Corinthians, or the 1 Corinthians, chapter 16, verse 2. Upon the first day of the week, we have that same phrase, upon the first day of the week. First, which is, once again, this time is kata mia. Kata mia. So kata, which means down, mia, which means one or first. So kata mia, one or first, one or the first, could have been the first Sabbath, or could have been, he don't know whether it was the first Sabbath or one of the Sabbaths. Could have been the first Sabbath. It says the first day is in italicized. Week is the word Sabbaton again. So you have upon the first Sabbath or one of the Sabbaths, right? He says, let every one of you lay by him in store as Yah have prospered him, that there be no gathering when I come. So he's saying one of these Sabbaths, you lay store one of the Sabbaths. Not on the first day of the week, because the first day of the week is an English translation from the Greek, which we just showed you. We proved to you right there in the text. That word week is Sabbaton, which is defined, once again, that word week is the word Sabbaton, which it says of Hebrew origin 7676, which is Shabbat, or intermission, that is the Sabbath. It says the Sabbath, that is the Sabbath, or the day of weekly repose. From secular avocations, also the observance of institution itself. By extension, the se'nnight, that is the interval between two Sabbaths. Likewise, the plural in all the above applications. So, with the Greek text, we showed you that the Sabbath was kept, even though the translators put their spin on it and threw a Mickey in the drink and put first day of the week. But in the Greek text, it read Sabbath, first Sabbath. Now, I know you didn't expect it to hear it that way, but brother, we read English. We speak English, right? Well, I hate to inform you, and I hate to be rude, but the Bible that you read wasn't written in English. So the thought processes of the scriptures, the Bible that you read, was in another language. So to get the full understanding of what the text is saying, we need to reference the text back to its mother language. And for those who say, well, the New Testament was written in Greek, we gave it to you in the Greek. And the Greek reference back to the Hebrew, which is the Hebrew word Sabbath or Shabbat. All right. Now, so we've covered Saturday and Sunday. I want to read something So we've covered Saturday and Sunday. Now I want to read something out of here, and then we're going to close out. Okay. Sunday, in the fossilized customs, we're going to read out of the fossilized customs book under Sunday, and it reads: Sunday, from Latin dies solis, the day of the sun. Since Babylon was established, pagans have worshipped the sun. Here is a few of the names they've used. So now he's going to break down the day of the sun. The Greeks, this is something that can be proven if you go to the library and go into the reference section and go into external reference section that's not to the common people. In some libraries they have a closed section where only people that actually really you can't check these books out. The library, they're kept in a secret vault sometimes. I learned that when I was in Philadelphia Public Library, down in the heart of the city, downtown, right? So they will tell you that the Sunday, Sun's Day, was named after the day of the sun, and the sun was called by these various different names: Baal, Shamash, Moloch, Ahura Mazda. And Mazda is a car. Dagon, Sol, Marduk, Mithras, Krishna. Krishna is where we get the word Christ from. That's why we don't use the word Christ, because Christ is not a Hebrew word. It's a Greek word. But that's another lesson. We'll deal with that at another time. Okay, Krishna, Amun-Ra, Altan, Woden, Odin, Zeus, Dezeus, and the Druid Teutonic God. Okay? So you say, well, brother, God, yes. God is the substitution. God is not a transliteration. It's a Germanic word. It is. I mean, everywhere you see God, if you go back to the Hebrew text, it says Elohim or Eloah. So in the English, God is a replacement, which is a Teutonic deity, right? He says, you may recall that the Pharaoh and the Caesar were worshipped as the sun, This began with the first king Nimrod, discussed later, he says. This pattern of worshipping the sun, moon, planets, and stars permeated the Babylonians, Persians, Chaldeans, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Celts, Mayans, Aztecs, and Indians. So all creation worshiped the sun. Greeks, Romans, Celtics, Mayans, Aztecs, and Indians. The governments were the religions. If they were good pagans, at death they would be transported to the skies or heaven. That's the doctrine of going to heaven when you die. To live in their deities, with their deities. This was called Nerva, Shambhala, or Elysian fields. The Roman consul Emperor Constantine I gave us the term Sunday, which he also called Solar Victus Mithras, the day of the unconquerable sun, Mithras. Okay, so that was given to us by Constantine I, the day Sunday. In 321 Common Era, he decreed under the penalty of death that all artisans, merchants, and people of his empire cease work on the venerable day of the sun in honor of Mithras. This was a universal edict and is still enforced in our Western culture with our blue laws. That's a fact. Intensifyingly, the government phone numbers are printed on blue pages in our U.S. phone books. It was a weekly ritual of the sun worshippers to assemble at dawn on this day to greet the sun at its rising. A great pillar of sun ray obelisk was the solar religion's primitive high place, condemned by scripture as a pillar of jealousy, secretly interpreted as a male fertility symbol. Various towers designs such as sleepless pagodas, turrets, and ziggurats. Okay? Minarets, spines, obelisks, and pyramids have served pagans well. The temples did not have high places, nor do synagogues. These high places would receive the first hollow rays of dawn. At this point, bells were rung by hand as a shanker grid, and large ones were struck with oak logs, swung horizontally. Gongs struck with hammers were especially fun for the Oriental pagan, but they also used a familiar bell shape too. The book of the conquest of Peru, Prescott, is an eyewitness of the blatant sun worship. Okay? The Inca would assemble at dawn eagerly. They watched the coming of the deity, and no sooner did his first yellow rays strike the turrets than a shout of gratulation broke forth from the assembled multitude. Wild tunes from barbaric instruments swelled louder and louder as his bright orb shone in full splendor on his voluntaries. The Romans considered anyone who did not worship the sun to be an atheist and a traitor, since Caesar was the sun enthroned in a man. Religion, politics, and sports were all different facets on the same thing. Sunday will be discussed, he says, will be discussed later. Okay, now, let me share this last piece of information with you as we approach this holiday season called Thanksgiving. Okay? Thanksgiving is a day. People say, well, brother, what's wrong with Thanksgiving? Is Thanksgiving pagan? You know, what's the origin of Thanksgiving Day? Okay. Beyond what is hyped up to be a day of giving thanks to God for his goodness, for him providing us with food and clothing and shelter and the harvest and the crops and all of that, we just set this day apart, brother, to give thanks, to have a day of prayer, right? All of that, right? Well, the Most High gave you the day of prayer, which is the Day of Atonement. So the world, Satan and his cohorts has disguised and hidden a day of worship to their God on his day. Now, let me ask you a question, right? Let me ask you a real good question. A real good question, right? Thanksgiving Day. Why? Let me just get you thinking here for a second. Just stop and pause for a minute. Right? Why is Thanksgiving Day always on a Thursday? Have you ever stopped to wonder that? Huh? Have you ever stopped to wonder why Thanksgiving is on a Thursday? I'm going to give it to you right here in this book. I'm going to show you some other stuff. I'm going to be done with this lesson, right? For today. And we'll pick back up on next Shabbat, if Yah says the same. In this book, under Thursday, right? It says day 5, the Celtic Thor's Day. So Thor has his origin with the Celts, right? I'm going to read here, and then I'm going to read here, right? And I'm going to close. Thor, the Celtics Thor Day, the deity of thunder and the son of Wotan, who is what? Wotan and Freya, the same as Tyrannus. Thor was associated with thunder, the Dutch dunder, and German donner, one of Santa's reindeers. Interesting, huh? The Romans honored Jupiter on this day, which was originally Iupitar, meaning Jove's father, or Jove, which corresponds to Zeus. The altar of Zeus, used at every Olympic game, is lit by a torch. The altar is shaped like a T. Thor's emblem was the hammer, secretly interpreted as the letter T, harkening back to Tammuz, the Babylonian Duzu, the son of Nimrod and Semiramis. So you have the T, which is coincidence that the turkey starts with the letter T, that the day is celebrated on the T day, which is the Thursday day, which celebrates the T, which goes back to Babylon, Tammuz, which is a day of worship to him. Now, if we go here and we look up Thor, right? And now Thor is, as we just discovered, right, is a Celtic deity, right? Because in this section here is divided up into sections. This blue section is the Celtic deity section, right? It says Thor, the mighty warrior. Thor, the Germanic Donar, was second only to Odin, a heroic figure with a great appetite. He was the strongest of all the gods. Thunder was caused when he hurled his hammer. When he struck it against stone, lightning flew like sparks. In different accounts, he made thunder by blowing into his beard, or as he crossed the heavens, walking alongside his chariot, whose iron wheels made thunder as they turned. Thor's hammer always returned to his hand. It could shatter the skulls of giants and raise the dead from their graves. Not simply a destroyer, Thor brought good fortune to brides and newborn babies, in an extension of his original role as a fertility god. Although the sagas lightly mock his boisterousness and lack of intelligence. So Thor, when you celebrate thanks turkey day on Thursday, the T goes back to Tammuz, which is the worship of the set apart day for the worship of Tammuz, who is the ancient father, who is a modern Greek, or I should say Celtic deity, Thor, which is Thursday. And that's where we get Thanksgiving Day origin from. Okay? So prayerfully you got something out of this lesson. And I'm going to close out for today. And we pray until the next time that the blessings of the Most High Yah be with you and your family. Shalom, shalom, shalom.